So we're going to brake just before or just after the 500 board. Really kind of depends on how much pressure you're applying and your brake bias. I have my bias lower than I typically do for most tracks. My bias setting as a track by track thing. Some tracks it's going to be higher, some tracks it's going to be lower. I spend my first couple sessions really figure that out, but I have my bias at 54.9 and braking just after the 500. I'm going to get the car slowed down as much as possible because I want to cut this pretty tight and get my rotation as quick as possible so I can go back to power. I don't want to have a lot of wheel input. I don't want to have this type of wheel input for too long. I want to be able to unwind the wheel and get back to power. So I'm getting my rotation rolling on the throttle, and then as soon as I've unwound the wheel, I'm back to full throttle. Cutting here, just lift while you're going over it so you don't unsettle the car and lose traction. Same here. You can be somewhat aggressive with throttle, but if you're overly aggressive around this point with the bumps, the back end's going to want to kind of kick out and you're going to lose momentum. So it's best to just kind of feather that throttle 85, 90% seems to be fine, and just carry your momentum all the way onto the straight. I'm going to brake at the 400 here. I'm not actually going to hit this curb at all. I actually found I would gain more time here by not jumping it and keeping momentum up and having to cut tighter here than I would jumping this and opening up the left-hander here, because you're already having to scrub so much speed for this left-hander because you want to hold that left-hander tight anyways. So I found it better for me to not hit this curb, carry more momentum out and then into this left-hander, and just I'd lose like a tenth or two. I'd gain a half a second. I was looking at some data, and I would gain 4/10 to 5/10 on entry and then lose 2/10 coming out of here. But this is not a long exit right here. So the amount of time I gained on entry off of that straight is enough to, in my opinion, to make not hitting the curb worth it. If I'm gaining more time here than I'm losing here, it doesn't really matter because this is not a very long straight. It's not a good passing opportunity. So if you can gain 2/10 through that sector or through that complex of corners, it allows a little bit more breathing room and less worry about someone running into you here. Braking just at the far, when the wall pokes out the most, generally is when you're going to be braking. So just after this black box. Going to brake kind of in a straight line, get your turn in. I think you can reference these two palm trees. I actually think John mentioned them in his. It's a good reference for your turn-in point. Get your rotation, throttle. Really, you can hold pretty close to this wall, and in my opinion, I think you can probably practice aiming to hit it. Really, honestly, for me, I have no problem getting close to the walls. I don't know if it's because I use VR and it feels natural, but I usually get very close to the walls and I'm never hitting them. But I would practice trying to hit this wall because the closer you can get to it, the quicker you'll be able to apply power out of this corner. You don't want to overload the car either. I actually never touch first through this section I just went through. Here I'm going to brake just before the 400, and the reason I'm doing that, I could attack this a little bit more aggressively, but what I found is that if I'm braking just before the 400, I'm able to get the car slowed and back to power as I'm hitting this apex. I don't want to hit this curb. I didn't find any benefit to hitting the curb. I actually found it a little bit detrimental, because anytime you're unsettling the car, you can't go back to full power. So I found scrubbing a little bit more speed on entry to open up your exit was the bigger time saver. This wall kind of does jet out, so be careful with that going to power. But once you get it dialed in, it's pretty straightforward. Here, just full send, hit the curb. It wasn't my most aggressive attempt at this. Sometimes I've held throttle up to this point, and maybe been a little bit more to the left, and cut a little bit more of this curb, but this worked out just fine. Car does jet out, but I mean it's enough to where it's not going to push you too wide, and as long as you're on brake soon enough, you can slow down for this rotation. You would ideally like to be as far left as possible, but I've found full sending it through that kink, you gained just more momentum, and more time gained than trying to absolutely make your way all the way over here to open up the exit of this corner. So for me, I found the time is aggressively hitting the kink and then just cutting this a little bit tighter. 60%, I would upshift pretty early, because once I'm going to second, at that point I can pretty much just go full throttle and I don't really have to worry about any type of wheel spin. If I'm coming out of this corner, staying in first, trying to rev out the RPM range, you'll lose traction, you'll wear the tires down. So short shift to second, and then just hold it wide open and you're good. And that is a 15.9 around St. Petersburg.